tuned in to the cold, hard truth. Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips@caymanmarlroad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
Yes, there we are. Good morning, everyone. Alric, can you hear me okay? Thumbs up. I'm going to bring you in here in a second. Folks, took me a minute to get ready this morning. Woo! Some mornings are just like that. Good morning to Irvelyn. Beautiful Olivia's here with us. Julie Brown says, good morning, y'all. Miss Janet from Grand Cayman. Good morning, Sai, joining us from Fort Lauderdale. I need to turn on the AC in here today. It feels a little warm. Good morning to you, my friend Marshall from North Carolina. Who else is here with us? Let me just see for a moment here. Let me just have a quick look at a few things. So tons of news going on around the world. One of the things that I saw is that the Philippines is actually having yet another storm. Folks, when you think that, this hurricane season has demonstrated what it's capable of, there's almost like we're going to up the stakes a little bit more. And so as you guys recall, there was a super typhoon in the Philippines recently. And the hurricane season says, we're not done yet. We're coming again. Amazingly enough, now they are dealing with a typhoon, which is their equivalent of a hurricane. So I think a super typhoon is when they're like in the 4 and 5, Cat 5 range. And this one, I need to check the details on, but I understand it's hitting the exact same area again of the Philippines after what they've just experienced. And so a lot of family members here, part of the Filipino community, are very, very concerned about, the impact of this storm. It's like what we've been experiencing, the same areas getting hit over and over again. So as you guys know, there is a low pressure system that everyone is watching that basically looks like it's going to develop in the exact same area as Hurricane Eta did. And that's just not cool. So what can we do except to be prepared as much as we can, just monitor these systems. So when they are coming our way, we are actually ready. And that's what we're going to be talking about with Alric this morning, because of course, Alric lives he has a home. He grew up in the area of Windsor Park. So he is very familiar with one of the areas in Cayman that has the worst flooding, if not the worst. I mean, I don't know who we'd actually give that award to, but it's a lot. So we will certainly be, I think, talking about some of the things that have transpired since the passage of, it was only a thunderstorm for us. It was only like 30 miles an hour. But it certainly did a lot of damage for what would normally be considered a very minor storm. So Alic has been out and about. He's actually, even before the storm came, he was out clearing out the drainage. So we're going to talk about, some of the preventative measures that we can take. Honestly, there's certain things that you just can't do anything about. It's on the government to do their jobs. And we'll talk about some of that as well. So Andy, good morning to you, my friend. How are you? I trust that you're well. Siobhan, of course, is here for it. Good morning, beautiful Siobhan. And Catherine is also joining us from the US. Good morning, Catherine. How are you? I love the little greetings that all of you put up for me. Sai says she is got her tea ready, and I don't even have my water now that you mentioned the tea. We were talking yesterday about some healthy habits that we're going to be adopting in terms of lifestyle changes. So water is definitely one that we have to drink a lot of. We heard Danika's take on it yesterday. So we're going to try to drink as much water as possible during the day. So I'm going to bring Alric up. And while Alric is chatting with you guys for a little bit, I'm actually going to go run and grab some water. Now, I'm having a really hard time with the concept of drinking room temperature water. I got to tell you that is going to be really hard for me. And I need to do some more research on that before I really think that it's absolutely necessary for me to drink room temperature water. Alric, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. And good morning to all your viewers.
Thank you so much, as usual, for joining us. We appreciate it.
Well, I'm happy to be here. Happy for the opportunity to express my freedom of speech like everyone else in Cayman should be doing.
Bonnie, good morning to the beautiful Bonnie. Bonnie says, I'm watching with you. Thank you so much, Bonnie, for tuning in. Catherine has just logged on as well. Catherine is watching. I love when folks really get into the show and they start watching. Now I'm going to, there's certain tricks of the trade here that I have to kind of do behind the scenes. You know, I'm always multitasking during the show and doing a couple things just to let people know that we're live, because sometimes people forget actually that we are live. So we want to just remind them. So we always send out a little reminder message on our WhatsApp news group, which, by the way, you can join our WhatsApp news group. Just send us a WhatsApp message at 324-1612, and you get everything that goes up on the website, everything goes up on social media. So you're always kept in the loop in terms of what is going on minute by minute. And in fact, there are times that you get information that nobody else gets, like you get it first, or, you know, sometimes we don't release it to the social media platform, but we do send it out over WhatsApp. Sometimes death announcements, people get really kind of weird about if it's on social media. And so we may just send it out to our WhatsApp group. Over the weekend, there was a situation where there was a request by the family not to post it on social media, and to also encourage people not to actually come by the parents' home because the mom is elderly, and they wanted an opportunity to have a word with her in advance of her finding out from, you know, anyone else. And they also wanted to have a doctor present at the session. So times like that, we might send that out on WhatsApp to say, hey guys, you know, this is the request that we have received, and let's just make sure that we are adhering to that as much as possible. But you know what? The truth of the matter is, I got to be honest with you, by the time we receive information, it is normally in relatively wide circulation. Now, I know you guys think that we have the most reach in the world. Perhaps we have a wider reach, but the times that I get stuff, I'm thinking this actually isn't really breaking news because everybody has it already. Edlin Moore, good morning, Mr. Edlin. We've not seen you in a while. How are you, my friend? Good to see you. We have Morna who's joining us. Morna says, good morning, my Sandy. Thanks for sending my reminders on WhatsApp. Thanks for keeping us updated on WhatsApp as well. So you are most welcome. Yes, Morna is in that group. She is one of the more recent persons, actually, recent as in, I think, a couple months, to be added to the group. And let me just explain to you guys how it works. It's actually a notification list, not technically a group. And a lot of people don't know this about WhatsApp, but WhatsApp have different means of communicating with large bodies of people. So a group allows everyone to see each other and to interact and to talk amongst the entire group. So whatever messages you send are not private. And what we have going on for CMR is actually a notification list. So I send out messages that everyone receives, and the only person that sees the responses is me. So nobody else gets to see those. So it's secure in terms of your privacy. No one else needs to know that you're in the news group. And also, a lot of times when I do send out information, I get tips. So in order to protect my sources, I don't necessarily want a group that everyone can be aware of who's in the group. So good morning, Brandon. Thank you so much. Before we get into things with Alric, last night, someone sent me a fight video from John Gray High School of some girls fighting. I was not impressed. And of course, when I get things like that, it's always a challenge to decide what to do with it. When it's minors, you know, I'm I like to err on the side of caution on how to handle it. I always turn it over to the authorities in case they don't know anything about it, so that they can carry out their necessary investigations and deal with it. And then there are occasions that I may post it on social media with a message, but what I've come to realize is that these kids actually enjoy having, they love to have their fight scenes or whatever they want to call it shown on social media because they think that they're going to get some clout. And in fact, this is one of the reasons why sometimes they start fighting, because they know that there are other kids there recording the fight with their phones and that it's going to end up on social media. So apparently it is a good thing if you end up on Cayman Mall Road. But I always tell people, don't end up on CMR for stealing, fighting, like all this ridiculous behavior. end up in there for something positive, like good grades, helping out somebody in the community, cleaning out, the drains in Windsor Park. Like, that's the kind of stuff that we like to highlight on our platform as positive things. So bad behavior should never be reinforced with unwanted attention. I kind of think that that's what's happening with our young people. They are enjoying the attention that they're getting from it. So I certainly don't want to play into that, and I don't want to be part of that. And I sometimes understand very much so the psychology of our young folks. And so I might double down on them and not give them what they want, because then maybe you'll stop fighting. Now I'm also aware, because young people message me all the time about these private groups on Instagram and other platforms. They're like fight groups where they're created just for the purpose of posting, these fights and stuff online for people to get their kicks out of. And I think that that's really unfortunate that our young people have resorted to that sort of thing for attention. And I think to myself, are they not getting attention at home? Like, what is the real deal here? We really need to start talking to them. And as you guys know, we've had it's a little bit on the back burner, but it's still very much in the works, our youth show. And these are some of the questions that I have for these young people. Why are you fighting at school? Why do you think it's cool to have that on social media? And in this case, it was very obvious that one young lady, they were seen to have a couple heated words. And then one young lady just lurched in and started, attacking the other girl. And I think, does she not have the communication skills to say what she's got to say and just keep it moving? It's really, really unfortunate. I have a 4-year-old child. I don't want to, which, by the way, she had a little incident yesterday at her school as well. And when you're in a school environment where the administrators and the teachers, well, even at the age of 4, sit down and say, listen, you have to learn to use your words. You don't touch other people. You don't hit other people. If you don't like something or you're getting upset or whatever, use your words to express that. Do not get physical. Do not get violent with people. And I think as a community, by and large, we have missed that lesson. Most of us have really missed that lesson. And I know you guys don't want to hear this, and we're going to have this conversation more than once. But one of the reasons we have missed that is because in our homes, we have grown up around a lot of violence. So we have grown up in homes where we were taught that it was okay for people to hit us. And we see people getting hit. Parents did it in the name of discipline. But at the end of the day, the core message remains, you do something I don't like, I'm going to hit you. And so who can blame kids when they go to school and they engage in that exact same behavior? You say something I don't like, I'm going to hit you. You look at me in the wrong way and I don't like it, I'm going to hit you. What other message have we had ingrained in our heads and our brains that this is the way that we operate and this is how we solve our problems? So your parents don't like what you do, they're going to hit you. They're going to force you into submission. They don't have the necessary skills to talk to you about, this is why it's best that you don't do this, or this is why you need to take this different approach. So Walton has joined us. Good morning, Walton. Glad to see that you're all tuned in. Siobhan says, good or bad attention is attention at the end of the day. I know, Siobhan, but some people actually do, when it's bad attention, some people, you can't shame people into kind of rethinking their behavior. And we have seen that done very, very successfully here on this platform. I have people all the time say to me, oh my gosh, I was going to park in that handicapped spot today. And I thought, what if someone is watching me and they take the photo and they send it to Cayman's worst parking? Or CMR. I don't want to be on. So do things for me. So Walton says, yes, you're ready into the conversation. Good morning, Sophia. Good morning, Unique. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. So we'll have, I feel like that's a bit of a micro conversation, but we will certainly have that for sure. There's a couple other things that we're very much working on behind the scenes. So listen, there's some things I cannot always bring to you first because I actually take it to the authorities first and allow them an opportunity to deal with it and handle it from a legal perspective. So one of the things, someone was just asking me, we sent out a message yesterday in the WhatsApp group, and I think eventually got posted on the Facebook page as well, about a fire down in Scranton. So there appears to have been a house fire in that area. I'm not sure if it was a major fire because I only received some photos that were like very far away, showing some smoke. It doesn't look like the entire structure was, what the heck? What? Folks, when you see a message that starts out with, my stepdaughter got raped by her mom's brother, and she's only 12, as one of your WhatsApp messages, you know that this is not going to be a good day. That is just, let me just take a breather here. Anyway, obviously that's one of those cases I was just talking about that has to be reported to the authorities if they don't already know. So yeah, we get all sorts of messages here, and a lot of them are not necessarily the kind of news that I want first thing in the morning. Yeah. Larry, good morning. So listen, you guys know that this is just an ongoing issue here in the Cayman Islands with her children being sexually assaulted. The person has sent a photo of the man, of course, because I don't have any of the details confirmed. I won't just plop that up on this platform yet. We need to find out what's going on. It sounds like maybe the authorities have been advised of it. But, you know, again, this is what our children are living with. I was just talking about the violence in our homes and what they're exposed to. Not only are they exposed to people beating them in the name of, oh, I'm trying to teach you a lesson or teach you discipline, they're also very much exposed to men, and in some instances women, who are sexually exploiting them, who are raping them, who are sexually abusing them. I mean, it is just unbelievable. It's just, I don't even know what to say. So let's leave that for now, because I do need.
That's one of the issues, though, Tanda, is that we have an overall environment where people are placed in fear, where they're afraid to speak out. For example, when you report something, people say it's fake news.
Yeah.
You've double checked it and triple checked it. The government will say it's fake news.
Alic, I'm just going to bring you up on the screen for a second. Let me just get some water and I'll be right back.
Sure. I was just saying that the issue is more that Cayman has created an environment, more specifically, the government has created an environment where people are living in fear. So when it's time to express your right to freedom of speech under the Constitution, instead of understanding that right and expressing that right, most people feel like, I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to get blacklisted. I'm not going to be able to feed my children. And the list goes on. So instead of creating that environment of I'm free to speak because I have a right to speak, most people are placed in fear. And I think that is an unfortunate result of the way that the government is dealing with the basic rights that people have. When the victim does report things, sometimes the victim is treated like the victim is the one who created the problem. So I think that we really need to have a government that actually respects our rights and is going to implement the law and execute the law. What a lot of people see is that sometimes the law is only applicable to certain people. So you see some people, they get a slap on the wrist and no punishment. And you see other people who are going to get the full punishment and go to jail. I mean, we've seen situations where the director of public prosecutions has decided not to proceed with certain cases. And on the outside, we wonder why. Sometimes we don't know all the reasons why the government doesn't decide to proceed, but sometimes it is a public figure, is some friend of government that they decide not to proceed with a claim against. But the problem really is the overall environment that's been created to place people in fear. And then the other thing is people actually not being aware of their rights. So people aren't aware of what the law may say. They're not aware how to defend themselves. And this is one of the reasons I think we need laws in a plain English sense, so that if you want to understand your rights or understand a defense you may have under a particular law, there's a plain English reading that you could look up. Because right now the laws are designed so that you must go see a lawyer, and not everybody has the money to go and pay for an expensive lawyer. So it's a serious issue, because when you consider that some of these things happen in lower income neighborhoods or lower income families, the person can't afford to pay for someone to hear their case or to analyze their case. And then if you want to do pro bono, if you want to get a lawyer that's going to do it free, you still have to go through a process to see if you qualify to get free legal advice on a pro bono basis. So for people who are victims, there's a big bureaucratic process. And some people just give up because they say, well, I don't have the money to go through the process, or they don't understand the process. It seems like it's too complicated, or they feel that they're going to be victimized for saying something. Someone's going to tease them, someone's going to mock them, or if they have children, their children are going to be subject to all of the scandal. So there's so many things going on, but our government hasn't really empowered the people to be confident and to get information in order to defend themselves, in order to feel secure in the environment, in order to feel secure in expressing themselves. It's a huge issue that, it starts from the top.
Yeah, if I can say, Alric, in terms of, someone getting legal advice, there really is no such thing as pro bono, in my opinion, under the legal system as such. I mean, you might have access to legal aid, but that's not free. And like you said, that is subject to a lot of requirements, financial and otherwise. There's certain cases that they will deny on the basis that, they think that it's not a winnable case. For example, if you're going up against the government, it's interesting that a government worker then has the authority to tell you whether or not you're eligible for legal aid. And we see a case right now with Billy Adams and a few other people. Their names are just escaping me at the moment. Miss Esme Smith and some others who were fighting for access points and access right of ways. And they have been told that they will not be granted legal aid for that process. And I think one of the reasons why they were told that is because Miss Esme, who happens to have a law degree but is not a qualified attorney, had advanced the application up to a certain point, and she had done so on her own. So they basically told her, well, if you got this far, keep going. You can continue to fight the government and all of their QCs and expensive lawyers on your own, which I think is really quite a shocking conclusion for that agency, the legal aid department, to have made. So, it's things like that when you do not have equal access to the judiciary or to the system that really is concerning, because everyone should have equal access. I mean, we see cases that people get off on that are quite shocking that they're able to get off, but because they had a decent lawyer and the lawyer highlighted certain things that perhaps, we hadn't thought about, that became important for the judge or the jury to consider. We just saw a case against some government workers at HSA, and they were released and found not guilty by a jury of their peers because there were too many questions in relation to what the allegations were that the government was actually making against these individuals. And I think that at the end of the day, the jurors were just like, this case doesn't make any sense. There's a lot of holes in this case. There's no logic. For most jurors look for motive, opportunity. Those are some of the critical things that you want to consider when you're thinking about whether someone has done something or not. And unfortunately, you find that, if a person doesn't actually understand or know the judicial system, they're not going to know what things perhaps they need to be looking at. So I am of the opinion that at some point in time, we need to have, just like how we have a DPP's office, we need to have a public defender's, public defender's office. No, that's what we have now. Office of public, what are they called? Office of prosecutor's office. So we have the opposite, what would it be called? Is it public defenders? Maybe. Alric, what would we call it?
I mean, we actually have, I think we have a legal defenders group, right?
No, what I'm talking about is the US model, where you don't just have lawyers defending people and they have to have a paycheck in order to do a good job. You actually have an office set up that is made up of a team of defense attorneys, and everyone who is accused of a criminal matter has free access to legal advice. You don't have to go through a legal aid process. You're automatically entitled to it. And you don't get the worst lawyers that are available out there. You have access to, some of the best, just like in the DPP's office. They don't have all the top lawyers in the world, but I tell you what, they definitely have some that are worth their grain of salt, that they're getting paid. And they have some that they're only going to give traffic matters to and low-level offenses. And we need to have that for defendants, where anyone can walk in there with a case. It's automatically assigned to, just like, the DPP, they will assign a caseload to particular individuals. Okay, you're going to get this case, you're going to get this case. And it happens on the opposite side, but it's defense attorneys looking out for the defendant. And they're able to defend their cases, and there's a sense of continuity. And, I think it would make more sense to fund that office. It's centralized. The lawyers get a paid salary. You're not having to, maybe you might have one or two QCs like on retainer on staff. But what I find now with defense attorneys is they're constantly they apply for legal aid. And then if they see it's a complicated case, they have to apply to get a QC approved to come in from overseas. And that adds significant cost to the defense. And I don't know how much money that department is costing government every single year, but I don't think it's any more economically efficient than having a centralized office that offers public defendants to the general public. So Sandra Miller is joining us on YouTube. Thank you so much. Sandra, along with 8 other people, are tuned into our YouTube channel. So that's one option of watching the show. And Sandra says we have lots of people, poor people in these islands, and the gap is getting greater each year. And I totally agree with you, Sandra. And I do not think that our government often understands that. They seem to have certain interests at heart. And the more that they push for, let's increase the population to 100,000 people. Let's bring in the rich Chinese. Let's do this, let's do that. They are making the gap grow larger and larger and larger, disenfranchising their people and not really putting any systems in place that address the concerns of the average person. And so that continues to be a recurring theme. And I think that we definitely need to be addressing that. So Ethel says, Your show will always be the best to me, hun. Bless you always for everything you do and say. Thank you so much, Miss Ethel. Really appreciate the love and support from you guys. Cece, good morning, Cindy. She says that Cayman is just small and corrupt, and that rich gets off and the poor suffer. Well, there's no doubt about it, folks, that if you have access to money, money gives you access to a lot of things in life, including good lawyers and good defense. And so everywhere in the world that you go, people who have money are more likely to get off than people who don't have money. That's a fact. And that's what I'm saying in terms of even a public defense office, you kind of level the playing field a little bit. There will still be people who will hire private lawyers because top lawyers will always work for themselves. Let's just be honest, right? They're not going to necessarily go work for a government agency. However, having said that, you can still get really good lawyers who are more concerned about defending people's right to have a fair trial than actually making the biggest possible payday. So you will have people who will say, you know what? Yes, I can go into a private firm and make more money, but I want to be able to help people. And so if I make a livable wage as an attorney, I will remain in the public defender's office and, defend the Joe Schmo that comes through the door. Having said that, as someone who sits in the courts every single day, I must say that by and large, I find the magistrates in particular to be very understanding of a lot of situations and a lot of things. I mean, when you first appear in court, like your very first appearance, you have the right to what's called duty counsel, which basically means you can talk to an attorney in a room privately before your docket number, your case number is called up. And then if you want legal aid from there, you can certainly apply for it through the legal aid office. And I have seen people like Magistrate Foldat say, hey, to Mr. John Furness, you're going to be duty counsel today. I've got a case for you. Help out this guy, go have a word with him before we call up the case. There are people who have drug addiction issues, and the courts are very, very much aware of that. So they will, again, be very, very sympathetic. I mean, I've heard Magistrate Foldat say, okay, we know this guy has a drug problem, and we know he's out there stealing and doing these things because of his drug addiction. It's not necessarily that he's a bad person. He just has an addiction that he can't get under control. So let's see if we can get him into drug rehab again. Let's see how we can help him. Just last week, there was a guy there. They had the manager from Caribbean Haven, which is our drug rehab facility that we have here in Island that's located in Breakers. And so he was giving reports, and the guy who was there, he said, they have no issues with him. When he's in drug rehab, he does well. He attends, whatever counseling sessions he's supposed to attend. He does the things that he's supposed to do. And so even in terms of bail restrictions, because they can impose bail restrictions once you're at Caribbean Haven, the facility manager said, we don't really have any concerns with him. You can leave him as is. But there are some other people who've been breaching their bail conditions who continue to be a problem, even when they're in drug rehab. And here's the information. Now, interestingly enough, there were some people who were actually committing crimes, and they were being told, the Caribbean Haven administrators were being told by the police that there was nothing that they could do. And they were like breaching curfew and their bail conditions. And the judge was like, what do you mean there's nothing that they can do? That's why we put bail conditions in place, because if someone breaches the bail conditions, the police have the authority to go out there and make the arrest and get it done. And, the judge was a bit surprised to hear the police saying that this fell outside of their responsibility and their remit. And it was just like, what are they telling you? That can't be right. So I just want to say that to add some balance to the conversation, because I'm not one to say that the system never works, that everybody's against us, the judges are against us, the prosecution's against us. I do sit there every single day. I've obviously had my own cases, and I do sit there every single day and I see the system working up to a certain extent. But there are a lot of things that can be tweaked and that can be modified to make the system work even better and as efficiently as possible. One of my recommendations is to have this public defender's office. Another recommendation is something called Teen Court, which I've mentioned in passing before, but it's a program that when I lived in Tampa as a teenager, which was eons ago, I participated in. It basically allows teenagers who are starting to get in trouble, it's a first offense kind of program, to go through a program where they are being, the court is made up of their peers. So it's a jury of their peers. It is a defense attorney and a prosecutor of their peers. So it's other teenagers putting forward their case, like, okay, yes, my client was in a fight, but this is what happened. And it's overseen by a proper judge and monitored, by the court system. But it does a couple of things. It gives the juvenile defendant an opportunity to reset the bar. So the teen court program has power. So a jury of your peers can, if you drive, they can strip you of your driver's license. They can give you community service. I'm trying to remember what else they could do. So there were certain things that we were permitted to do, right? The minimum that you did just to even participate in the program was 10 hours community work. Whether you were guilty or not guilty, you had to commit to, okay, if I go into this program, I will do a minimum of 10 hours community work, give back to my community, just for the mere fact that I am using court resources. I have shown up in the court system. I'm going to give back. And the other thing I found for me is someone who was actually in law, and at least it gave me an opportunity to test the waters out to see if I really liked it. And you know what was amazing? It also gave me wonderful connections. Like one day I was kind of thrown into a situation where a young guy didn't have a defense attorney. And they were like, okay, you're always on the prosecution side, because believe it or not, I used to like to prosecute. And they're like, why don't you try your hand at the defense side? And you literally get your little case, your client is there, you sit down with the client, you go through, you ask them questions. So there's a training program that you go through as well. You ask them questions about what happened, and then you put forward their side of the story, any mitigating factors, like, yes, my client was in this fight, but the other person hit him first, or this is what happened. You kind of get a little bit of practice. And do you guys know that the proper judge who was overseeing the proceedings that day, his name was Judge Castor. He was a very well-known, well-respected judge in Tampa at the time. He saw me do my one time at defending someone, and he actually said to me, you actually have really good advocacy skills. And I know you always want to prosecute, but maybe you need to think about the flip side of this and consider defense work, because you mitigated so well on behalf of your client that he literally walked away with nothing. He just did the 10 hours community service, which everyone has to do. And, I thought you actually did a really good job. You brought up some important components for the jury to think about. And I'd never thought about being on the defense side before, and that gave me a pause for thought. But more importantly, the program gave young people access, not just young offenders, but people who are interested in the judiciary, access to the court system so that they could show up to court, they could see how things work. I know most of you, if you've never been a defendant or a juror, you've never been to court, you've never stepped foot in the courthouse. You don't know how the system works. You don't even know where the jury box is, like none of that. And those things are important. And so as teenagers, it gave us all an opportunity to really get a feel for some of the judicial system. And in this case, Judge Castor was so impressed with my capabilities. He said, listen, I want to take you out for lunch. So we did a little lunch. And he basically said to me, any law school in Florida that you want to go to, obviously my grades have to be good, I will get you in. Because one letter from him, that's the kind of power he had in the state of Florida, one letter from him guaranteed you entrance into whether it was Stetson Law School, University of Florida, any law school that you wanted to go to. He's like, I will write your reference letter and you can go. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Of course, under the American system, you have to do your 4-year undergraduate degree first before you then go on to law school. And in my case, I actually decided to return home in order to do law school. So Sai, good morning. My apologies. We've gone off on a little bit of a tangent there, but these are some important things. Alric is an attorney. He does not practice. He does corporate work. So he doesn't really do, sort of criminal or civil advocacy in court, But I'm sure as an attorney, he still appreciates the important role that all types of attorneys play in the system. Alric?
Yeah, I mean, while we're not in the system in terms of litigation or going to court, every attorney in Cayman is an officer of the court. So regardless of whether you're in court, you're still an officer of the court. So I do appreciate the process. And I know you say that sometimes things work out for people who are in difficult situations, but it is a reality that poor people, people with low income, people who have to make the choice between feeding a child and paying a phone bill, when you have that type of person in court and or who has to go to court, has to find a lawyer, it becomes a very difficult situation. So sometimes poor people just abandon the case because, you know, they just can't afford it, or they just don't want to go through the stress of the procedures and taking the next step. So there are genuine cases where people just give up because they just can't deal with the stress or can't afford it. So while we look at what the provisions of laws say about how you can access the court, et cetera, there is a big reality that some people just feel intimidated by the process. I mean, it's just a reality. But definitely, Sandy, I think that this is the area that you are made for. I think we should reconsider.
Oh my gosh. Well, you know what? It's not even an issue for me of reconsidering. Wait a minute. You're talking about law or politics? Let me clarify where this conversation just went.
Well, you do good in either. You do good in both.
Well, you know, here under the English system, in order to get qualified as an attorney, you do need someone to give you articles, and that's a whole other conversation. But a lot of Caymanians are not getting the opportunity to do articles for different reasons. And so I fall into that boat. Too vocal, too black, too this, too that, too Caymanian. I don't know. Those are the reasons. Sai says, is it true that the Westin Hotel is owned by Chinese people? I have no idea. But what I would say is obviously the Westin Hotel is a franchise, but I wouldn't be surprised. Listen, the Chinese own a lot and they have a lot of money. And all over the world, they're considered kind of the ultra super rich at the moment. There have been concerns with, you know, even in this country, in the Caribbean, the Americans who, it's a little bit of an interesting situation, but they've issued an alert to the Caribbean, like, you guys need to be careful. You're letting too many Chinese people in. And there's serious implications when you're borrowing money from the Chinese and you're using them to fund your debt and to build your bridges and to build your roadways and build your buildings and build your ports. And so one needs to be mindful of the sacrifices or what you're going to be giving up as a result of that. So I don't personally have any knowledge of who owns the Westin. If it's owned by Chinese, that would certainly not be anything that would surprise me per se, because they own a lot of things all over the world. So Yasmin says that Cayman needs to have a small claims court. Myself and many other people have landlords that keep deposit without any justification. Who would bother going to court for under $1,000 if it costs more than money you get back? Well, Yasmin, I've got good news for you. Cayman does have a small claim court, and you can go any day of the week and represent yourself. This is why I really have been searching for an attorney high and low, and have had no luck getting an attorney to come on this program, even once a month. When I say an attorney, I don't mean the corporate guys, someone who has litigation experience. So a little bit of civil, a little bit of family law, a little bit of criminal, who can come on this program and talk to you guys about the court system and some of the laws and some of what your rights are and that sort of thing. But I have not been able to secure a single attorney. They're too busy, apparently, to come on here and give you guys good advice. But let me—
Maybe they're afraid. Maybe they're afraid.
Well, maybe, I don't know. But let me assure you that there is such a thing as small claims court. They don't call it small claims court, Yasmin, but it is summary court. So you can take a person to summary court for anything up to $20,000. If it's $20,000 or more, then that becomes a grand court matter. And you can also represent yourself, is another thing people may not know, in both summary or grand court, to be quite frank. Grand court doesn't like people, the judges really don't like people to represent themselves per se, because the process gets a lot more complicated. There's a thing called the grand court and the summary court rules, which is like the playbook on how you go to court and how you do things. And at grand court, the grand court rules are a little bit more complicated, and there are rules that apply to different types of litigation matters and so on. And you have to do your documents in a very formal way. So grand court judges will always give you good advice and say, you know what, get a lawyer. Only a fool represents themselves, as the saying goes. Get a lawyer, hire someone. But if you have a matter, Yasmin, that is under $1,000, you can defend yourself. And believe me, it's not as difficult as you think. And in fact, there is a handbook that was done by, I think, the Ombudsman Office. I'd have to go back and have a look, but I'm pretty sure it was the Ombudsman's Office. And it's called the Summary Court Handbook. And it comes in two parts. One part tells you how to start your litigation, how to do the steps and so on. This is what you can expect. This is what is going to happen. And then part two has all of the forms. So let me just tell you. It's called the Summary Court Handbook. And Yasmin, if you want a copy of it, I can certainly arrange to get this to you. I'm supposed to have it somewhere in my hard. Right. So it's actually called the Small Claims Handbook. So they have called it the Small Claims Handbook. The last edition I have, I don't know if this is the final one, but this was the 4th edition. It is a little bit dated, but nothing has changed, I can assure you, in the court system. And it does come in a part 1 and a part 2. I can send it to you. I think for as little as $25, you can file your writ, or whatever they call it in summary court, and you can get the process started to sue your landlord for your $1,000 back. And I agree with you that the law should do a better job of protecting tenants in particular, both landlords and tenants. But, you know, landlords have the upper hand in this relationship, and they are able to pretty much do whatever the heck they want, which is very, very concerning. And so keeping people's money is one of the things that I've heard landlords do with no real justification. And so if you have evidence of that, you've got photos, you've got, you know, messages, text messages, whatever, between yourself and the landlord, then definitely you can take them to court and get your money back. And the judges hear these types of cases all the time where people represent themselves and they win. Now, enforcement is a different situation once you win your money, but we can talk about that later. So I can send that to you. Elizabeth, good morning. Hi, Odette. Alice joins us. Yasmin says, yes, please send that to her. Not a problem. Alric, let's get back to Thunderstorm Eta, because that was supposed to be the conversation today. As you can see, we go with the flow on this program, wherever the wind takes us and what people want to talk about.
Listen, I want to talk about what people want to talk about. So
yes,
there's no fixed schedule or, you know, fixed people. So whatever people want to talk about, that's what we talk about. And one of the things about the recent tropical storm is that we find that it didn't really reveal any new issues. What we find is that the things that we see get highlighted because of drastic events or natural disasters or emergencies, but they're not really new problems. The issue that we have is that as a people, we don't hold the elected officials accountable for their whole period of office. What happens in Cayman is people come around to your house, they have time for you to get your vote. But after they get your vote, you don't really hear from them for the next 3 years. And it's only like around election time or a few months before election or at Christmas time, when it's time for the Christmas parties, etc., that you start to hear from them. And, you know, we find that issues tend to remain the same every 4 years. And it's because we aren't really holding the people accountable. And, you know, when we look at what happened with this recent tropical storm, I want to say that it's not really about us complaining. You know, it's about what the elected officials told us that they were going to do to improve our lives, to make sure there's affordable housing, to make sure there's employment, to make sure there's access to health care, to make sure our environment is protected. I understand the government got a lot of credit for keeping us safe during the lockdown, but we also have to remember we can't re-elect a government based on one issue. So the one issue that they did very well, in the opinion of some people, is keeping us safe in terms of our overall healthcare situation. They kept us safe, but healthcare is one of many other issues. And if we can look at some of the positives from a tropical storm, we saw how social media was used, and in particular, Cayman Mile Road was using social media to make sure that people were aware of how different areas looked, down power lines, areas to avoid. We saw social media being used to communicate those issues, and seeing people communicate with each other and encourage each other. We saw that some shelters were open by the government, and that was great. So those affected by the storm had access to shelters. We saw how the utility company was out there, cutting down some of the trees and repairing light poles. And then a few days ago, I went by Smith Market here, and I noticed that the government workers were out there gathering, the debris, so that all that stuff is good. Everyone is working together during the storm. And I guess our biggest thing is Cayman doesn't usually report loss of life during these storms. So I think all that's great, and those are some of the positive things. And I mean, to give you a little story what happened. So during the storm, I decided to drive through the whole of Georgetown South, and I basically just parked my car by the entrance of Windsor Park by Vigoro, and I walked through East Boulevard first, and that road was blocked off, and that area was flooded. So Apollo Link and East Boulevard were flooded.
And this was before the storm, it was flooded? Like before the storm proper?
This area normally floods.
Okay.
And one of the issues with East Boulevard on this particular area, which is close to Apollo Link, is that there is a drain, but my understanding is that the water table is very high. And the other issue with the drains is, well, in that area, East Boulevard, we should probably get another drain along that road to help with the draining of the water. But the overall issue with the drains in Windsor Park and other places is in Georgetown South is that it's understood that they're not being cleaned on a regular basis. So while they get cleaned, during the storm or after the storm, the concern is maybe we could get the relevant parties to clean those drains on a regular basis. And I mean, I see when I was on Hawkins Drive, I saw, Hartwell Macfield and his son. Hartwell is known as Whitey, to most people. And Whitey takes it upon himself to clean some of those drains, especially the one on Hawkins Drive. And, that's really impressive. I mean, he's not doing it for, any cameras or anything. Whitey's just doing it because it's his neighborhood too. And so you see, I saw Whitey and his son clean out the drain on Hawkins Drive. And shortly after that, the water started to go down. So it just shows you the issue of the clogged drain is not because the storm came. It's because we need to clean the drains more frequently, or in some cases, we need more drains or we need deeper wells. So I basically walked through East Boulevard, Apollo Link, walked along Hawkins Drive, and went over to Anthony Drive. When I got out to Anthony Drive, that was totally flooded.
Wow.
And going into Talbot Lane and going up to Oak Mill Street where your friend lives.
Mhm.
That thing was like, it was like, like you were looking for Noah's Ark, basically.
Wow.
It was just amazing. And you probably saw some of the pictures posted by other
Yeah.
people.
I mean, Windsor Park was the area where we had the fish swimming in the water.
I was just about to ask you about that. I mean, is that
I honestly do not know how the fish got in there and exactly what happened. To me, that's just so crazy.
Yeah.
But I guess actually someone I think on Monday mentioned, or on Tuesday mentioned, that there's a pond in the area that has some fish. So in all likelihood, it was probably the fish from that pond. But let's look at Alric. Does have a YouTube channel, and he does post stuff on his YouTube channel. So I do want to have a look at something that you posted. I believe this video was done after the storm. Let me just check, or the day of the storm. But you did post this up.
I actually didn't upload it. I sent it to your WhatsApp, but I never uploaded it.
Okay. So this one here that says tropical storm impacts Georgetown South, I have that available and ready to go. So let's just have a look at that so that we can see what Alaric's thoughts were on Saturday as the storm was kind of passing. So give me 1 second here, folks. All right, Alric. So let's talk about some of the things that are highlighted in that video. First of all, the photos that you presented of the different areas demonstrating how bad the flooding was for each location, I thought was truly amazing. As we can see, some areas of Windsor Park were worse than others. What's your thoughts on why that's happening? Is it just because of how the roads are, how old a particular area of Windsor Park is? Are there some areas that are more low-lying than others?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of that area was swamp, and there's some places where there was a huge pond, and then apartments were just built right along that area. And of course, if that area floods, those apartments are going to get hit as well. When you look along Oak Mill Street, for example, there's some houses that are definitely below the street. And what happens is the water flows into those people's homes. And I drove by yesterday and I saw people trying to basically repair their homes. This also happened along East Boulevard. And the reason that the residents blocked the road is because that was one of the only exits. So you could have exited through East Boulevard, or you could have exited through outpost.
Mhm.
And the reason that the residents block the road on East Boulevard is because there are people still speeding by. And when you speed by and you have flood, the flood water goes into people's homes.
Mm.
So, you know, it's like some things you don't think about that are issues, but the flood can cause water damage to people's homes, you know, their personal belongings. The water damage also can cause damage to businesses. Because
Alric, for some reason, I don't know if it's just me, but you seem to be leaning off of the camera. So I want you to come a little bit back this way. There we go, young man. Okay.
I just like came on Monroe so much that I get so relaxed, you know.
Yeah, come over a little bit more centered. There we go. All right. So there are some areas.
Road, man.
There are some areas that are worse than others. Aliano says that the whole of Anthony Drive is a nightmare once it rains. And he was saying that, yes, there is a pond in that area. So part of the problem you think is that a lot of this land was just swamp anyway. But listen, at some point, South Sound was swampland too. It's just that because somebody decided that oceanfront was more valuable than anything else, that swamp has been built up by multi-million-dollar homes and multi-million-dollar apartment complexes. But I think a lot of Cayman, as it turns out, the topography of this island was just swampy marshland. And it's amazing how land values don't reflect what the land used to be. But there's also this issue, and I take your point, that as roads are put in or they're repaved or they're built up, there is this ongoing issue of the roads being higher than the surrounding areas. So for example, one of the most horrible complexes in Georgetown when it rains is Pasadora Place. And it doesn't take much. It's like a 5-minute downpour and the parking lot at Pasadora is underwater and you're walking in ankle deep water. And what I found as a previous tenant in that area is that unfortunately, a lot of my clients, when it would rain, they'd be like, oh, I can't come and see you today because it's raining. So it does impact homeowners. It does impact small business owners when they have to deal with this situation. And that wasn't a storm. That was just an average summer afternoon when it would rain for 5 minutes. We were underwater. And, you know, I know one of the things that has made it worse is I think in early 2016 or so, it might have been 2015, they repaved that area of Smith Road. They redid it completely, and repaving it and adding that extra level did allow, I think, more water to drain into Pasadora Place. But proper drainage was one of the things that you've mentioned. So Kenneth Bryan has joined us as a viewer this morning. Thank you so much, Kenneth. And good morning to you. And by the way, Kenneth was also one of those representatives, much like Alric, that was out and about doing a lot of stuff in the community. And quite funny enough, I actually had one of your constituents, Kenneth, who sent me some stuff last night saying that you were out and about. They sent me some photos doing some work in the community. And they said, can you post some of this stuff that Kenneth has been doing for Georgetown Central for the senior citizens who were unable to pay to have it done? And we know that we did do a live stream refeed with Kenneth the other day where he was saying, you know, he was going to hire a few guys, pay them, I think it was $10 an hour to go out there, cut down some tree limbs and to do some other stuff. So now we have actual footage of this. And I see Kenneth with a, what is this thing called? A saw? Is that what we call it? I don't even know.
Chainsaw.
This is how bad I am at these things, but I'll show you. There's evidence of what Kenneth was up to. But he was out there cutting down trees himself.
Yeah, man, I'm following in Kenneth.
Taking the lead.
I'm following in his footsteps, man, because
look at this. That's Kenneth Bryan right there, folks. There he is with that is a saw, right? Is that what we call it?
Yeah, a chainsaw.
Yeah. So I don't know who taught Kenneth how to use a chainsaw, but he looks like he can handle it. And he's there cutting down some tree limbs and some other stuff. So a big shout out to Kenneth, who continues to, you know, get his hands dirty. He gets out there in the community and he does the work. So it's great sometimes if you can definitely afford to pay people, but we know money is tight for everyone. So Kenneth doesn't mind getting out there and helping as well. Mr. Walton, thank you so much. So Alric, he says, Alric, without voting along party lines, we do not know what we are going to get for a government. As an independent, will you be publicly, I think that is supposed to be aligning with other candidates so we know what like-minded persons you are supporting? So this is a good question because people are of the opinion that parties, I guess, you know what you're getting. But Walton, before Alric answers the question, can I really seriously ask you that even with the party system, do you really know what you're getting other than the people? I mean, do you really know what you're getting? Like, is there a manifesto that says the PPM is a labor party, or they believe in these things for the people, or whatever? Policy driven aspects of the manifesto. What does the CDP stand for? So when you vote for a party, in my mind, you're just voting because, oh, I like Alden McLaughlin, or I like McKeeva Bush, or because my grandma told me I better vote for McKeeva Bush, or she can hit me upside the head with the cookie roller or whatever, you know? So there is, in my opinion, you don't know what you're getting. As we saw this last time, people voted pretty much equally down the line. Some people voted for the party, some people voted for independence, and we still didn't know what we were getting. And so we still end up getting a PPM government that they want to call a coalition government, because in order to form the government, they had to pull in a few people from the CDP. But the CDP doesn't really have any power. It's a PPM government, you know, and they pulled in a couple independents. So would you ask that same question of people who jumped on with the coalition government? So we have Austin Harris, we have the representative Juliana O'Connor Connolly, although I think she's now a PPM member. She wasn't at the time of the last election. Tara Rivers is still an independent, as far as I know. Dwayne Seymour is still an independent, as far as I know, and they're all part of the government. And I agree. This is the point that I'm trying to make, really, is that the Cayman Islands does not have a proper party system entrenched. Our party system is the equivalent of a sorority house, where, you know, you just kind of jump in, ray, you get your little, what do you call the little things that cheerleaders use? You have your little party right before election. Pom-poms, right? So you have your little pom-pom party, you're gonna do a little sleepover. And then as soon as the election is over and they've appointed the ministers and they're back in place, that's it. You don't even hear anything about the party after that. You don't hear of the party actually properly following their own constitution. But Alric, who are you aligning yourself with is the question that Walton wants to know.
So Walton is right. When you have a group or a party, you tend to know or have an idea of the direction they're going to take. For example, when you look at this ruling government, you get the feeling, and most people get the feeling, that they are for special interests and not for the general interest of the guy in the street in Cayman. So that's just a general feeling that people get. And so people want to know that you can work with other people. Number one, that the group is organized, they're going to execute in the best interest of Cayman, and they want to know what the philosophy of the group is. And they want to know that you are going to execute your mandate, because that's one of the biggest issues that we have, is that politicians will not execute the mandate, and then 6 months before election, they explain that they need 4 more years to execute what they promised to execute 4 years ago. So I'm aligned with Kathy Ann Wilkes and Michael Miles at the moment, and we are talking to different people who may decide to run. And the purpose of this is to understand whether we share some of the same values. We don't have to share everything 100%, but the majority of the things that we believe in, the principles, the core values, must be the same, or at least similar. Because in the end, when we come to execute policy, we have to do it in a consistent and measured way that's in the best interest of Cayman and Caymans for the long term. So that's why I would align myself with someone like Kathy Ann Wilkes in West Bay Central and Michael Miles in Prospect, because I know that there are people who believe in not just talking about things, but getting them done. So the common interest that we all have is execution of policy. So we realize that before you go into politics, you think to yourself, we need a new law here, we need a new policy here. But the truth is, many consultant reports have been produced. The Auditor General has produced many independent findings. The Public Accounts Committee has raised many concerns about how certain statutory authorities operate, including OFREG. The issue is, we have these recommendations, but they're not implemented. Millions of dollars are spent on recommendations, and they're just placed on the shelf. And the reason that they're placed on the shelf is that we have people who are more interested in executing the interests of a special interest group, rather than looking at all our Caymanians and saying, how can I help to lift our Caymanians? So as you know, I spent a lot of the lockdown delivering food, but I can tell you, it's not just about delivering food. It's about helping people to get to the next level. So if you can help someone with their resume and help them to get introduced to a new employer, that's what needs to be done. Helping that person help themselves to become a better person so they can help their own family and become a contributor to society. What is happening, with the current government is we hear comments like Caymans are entitled. Well, I tell you what, this is Cayman. Where else do you expect them to feel safe and feel that they should have an opportunity? This is their country, so they should feel entitled. So, I don't mean that people should be able to just walk into a job with no qualifications, but this is Cayman, and we have an immigration law where under Regulation 6 deals with training. And it says basically that if someone's going to have a permit renewed, then the reg says that they may have a training program in place to progress Caymanians and show the advancement of Caymanians. The problem with Reg 6 is that it says may have a training program. And if you understand what may means, it means you might do it or you might not do it. There's no obligation. So that's one of the things when we get back to talking about our core principle of being people who want to implement and execute policy, is that look at Reg 6 of the immigration law, for example. We need to change that wording from may provide a training program for Caymanians to shall provide a training program for Caymanians, so that these companies have a legal obligation to provide that training. And when you look at this kind of wording that arises in legislation, you have to say to yourself, in whose interests was this stuff drafted? And so that is one of the reasons why we focus on policy execution and implementation, and also implementation of recommendations that are in the best interest of Cayman and Caymanians. I think some people look at the marketing and you hear government saying they're going to do this and they're going to do that, but there are very few things that government seems to do that are actually very effective. For example, when you think about coming out of lockdown, there were so many opportunities to retool and retrain those tourism workers. For example, one example is tourism workers are just one example of a category of people that could have been retrained and retooled. But when you look at the policy end now, the tourism workers were given a stipend, and some of them took a while for them to receive the stipend. And I'm only aware because I was actually delivering food in West Bay, and a lot of those people were tourism workers, and it wasn't easy for them. And so when you look at policy compared to what is done for Caymanians and what is done for other people, here's an example. So a stipend is given to those tourism workers. And I didn't see any real effort to retool and retrain them. I would have liked to have seen that. Instead, what I saw was the government passing the Global Citizen Certificate Program. Now, those regulations only require someone to be in Cayman. So to give you some background, just 2 seconds on that. The Global Citizen Certificate Program is for people that normally work from home. So let's say you live in Florida and your business is basically working from home. Under the Global Citizen Certificate Program, you can come to Cayman and now work from home. The idea behind this is that people would start suspending restaurants here, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is that those people still have their own expenses in their own country, their own mortgages, taxes, et cetera. So the bottom line is, how much money would they actually have to spend? But more importantly is, they're only required to be here for 90 days. And so what will happen is people will come in for 90 days under that Global Citizen Program. They will do interviews for a job. They will see how good Cayman life is. They will see, how much money can be made here. They will see the job opportunities. They will secure a job, then 90 days and come back and get a job. What I'm saying is, we created these regulations that facilitate employment for overseas persons. Where are the regulations? Where's the legislation coming out of COVID, coming out of lockdown, that is giving Caymanians these opportunities? So when we talk about entitlement, when we say that Caymanians are entitled, let's look at the facts. The facts are that Caymanians are hardworking. Caymanians are coming back from university, qualified. They're working overseas and coming home with years of experience, international experience. And yet we focus on, or the government focuses on, regulations and legislation that facilitates the employment of overseas workers and the promotion of overseas workers, basically laying the red carpet out for a lot of other people. But when it comes to Caymanians, the only comment is that we're entitled. And I think that's really unfortunate, because I think there's a segment of every society that doesn't want to work. But from around talking to Caymanians, going to their homes, I mean, I gave you one example of someone else in tourism. In January of this year, a friend of mine in Windsor Park who drives a bus, she says that she would like to drive on a different route. So she was previously driving on Route 2, and she wants to drive on Route 1 because she felt that Route 1 would give her a better opportunity to make money for her family. The reason she wants to drive on Route 1 is because she don't want to depend on the government for handouts and food cards, stuff like that. She just wanted the opportunity. So she wanted to have that flexibility, in the route. And so in January, we wrote to the public transport unit, trying to get an understanding if she could change her route. And so the things we discussed with them are the things that we wrote to the transport unit are things like, we said it's unclear how the routes were originally awarded. Because sometimes if you are awarded a route, for example, Route 1, which is supposed to be profitable, if it's profitable, then you get to buy more buses, and then you get more revenue capability on that route. So we wanted to understand the manner in which the routes were initially awarded, because we didn't really see any set rules or guidelines on the site for the public transport unit to give an indication how they were awarded. And then next we asked the question, it looks like the design of the routes have actually changed over the years, and sort of why. And we saw that drivers of specific routes were stuck with that route indefinitely. So if you were on Route 1 or Route 2 or Route 3, you're stuck in that for life. And that seemed weird because there didn't seem to be any flexibility or any ability to swap routes or any sort of revolving timetable where someone would work on a route for 3 months and then change with someone else for 3 months. So what we found is because you couldn't switch, you were stuck on a route that might be unprofitable. So that was my friend's case. She just wanted to switch, to Route 1. And what we found is the people who were not on a profitable route, they were sort of sneaking out and going on a route that they weren't licensed to do. And so what would happen then is that they would get fined. And the issue with the fine is that some of these people who were on profitable routes, they were just making like sometimes $50 a day or $25 a day. And then that would go back to pay for gas. So what we were saying to the public transport unit was basically, if our belief is correct, it may mean that the rules and guidelines, again, I'm going back to policy. It may mean that the rules and guidelines governing the award of the bus routes must be revisited to ensure that we have the right balance to guarantee a fair and equitable system for all Cayman bus owners. And we sort of gave some warning as to what would happen if there's not a fair system. So we noted to the public transport unit that this not allowing someone the flexibility to work on a different route, having them stuck on a route for life that's not profitable, it could cause significant hardship to families. And the result of this is that if you're not making money, then you're going to start asking the government for money. And most Caymans don't want to do that. So as a result of bad policy and bad law and bad decisions, we have a situation where there are people who would like to have more flexible bus routes so they can have an opportunity to make more money. They want to work hard. They don't want no handouts. They're not getting opportunity to do it. And so this is from January. So from January, we were corresponding with the public transport unit. And yesterday I was given a copy of a letter dated September. So January to September, that's how long it took to get this issue resolved. And so the public transport unit responded by saying, in examining your petition, the board noted that Route 1 West Bay is adequately serviced at this time. Based on the above, please be advised that your petition to conduct operation on Route 1 is declined. So the reason that they give is that Route 1 is adequately serviced. I mean, we're talking about people that are coming out of Caymanians that are coming out of a lockdown and who are expecting the government to create infrastructure that allows them some options to continue to make money. And I thought that the public transport unit would have said to my friend, well, listen, we know that you're normally on Route 2, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to create some flexibility so that bus drivers can switch between routes now during this post-lockdown period. This will give you a chance to make some money. You're going to have to compete because there are other people on Route 1. And it's just unfortunate that when it comes to policy, and as I say, policy is important to the people I'm working with, the people I'm aligned with. This is an example of how important policy is and how it impacts somebody's life. So not having a good policy in place that allows flexibility for bus drivers, for bus routes, that impacts a person's ability to make money. That then impacts their ability to take care of their family, pay for bills, et cetera, et cetera. And so the people that you owe now are saying, how come you're not paying me? So next step, they're going to take you to court. And so we have this cycle that if you have poor policy in place or policy that's not flexible enough, these are types of outcomes. It ends up hitting the rest of the community. So a simple amendment in policy that improve the lives of Caymanians. It just shows that the government is unwilling to do it. But if you are an overseas worker, they're willing to pass regulations to facilitate your employment and your way of living, and to better your way of living, and to secure new employment in Cayman. So it just shows you.
Sorry, Alric. Louis says he's present. Good morning. Gadiel Donovan is joining us from New York. Miss Beulah is watching. Sue says, good morning, Sandy. We still have no representation for Savannah. It's pathetic. Really nobody like Alric. He's great. Alric, have you ever thought about running anywhere else? It looks like there's some people who want options elsewhere.
Well, I think you're going to start to see.
I still need you to move over a little bit. I feel like you're literally falling off this. Nope, the other way. There we go. Yes, perfect. Yes, there you go.
I think we're going to start to see some new candidates, maybe December, maybe January. Definitely you're going to see the existing politicians come around in December, because that's the time they come around to help.
It's Christmas ham time in Turkey.
Yeah, I mean, let's actually have that conversation. What do your viewers think of people that give out chicken in Turkey normally, in normal circumstances, and now after Corona? Because the reason I want to address this is that I've given out a lot of food, obviously, during the lockdown, and the situation is that we still have Caymans who are unemployed, or who are being given less days of the week at work. So they got a job. Some of them got a job, but now they only got 2 days of work. So 2 days of work is, and you got kids that are being paid, like, I understand, $10 a day in some places. So it's a really tough situation. So the reality is that you can't break the election law and do vote buying, right? You can't break the election law. So my suggestion for the incumbents is, I think you should just give the money to charity and make the charities reach out to the people, so that there is no misinterpretation or misconception about why you're doing the giving at Christmas. I know a lot of charities get involved in giving at Christmas, so maybe if you're concerned about a perception of your vote buying, maybe you should just give the money to the charity, because that will probably remove that perception that you're doing something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'll be honest with you, Alric. The line between sometimes vote buying and just genuinely helping people can be very blurry. And people always want to assume that when someone who is running for political office is altruistic, so in other words, they like to help people, whether it's yourself doing, feeding people, working with nonprofit organizations like Meals on Wheels, like the food bank, and so on. People always want to assume the worst, which is that your motive for doing so is because you are running for public office. Now, what I say to people, in my opinion, one way to gauge whether someone is authentic about their community service or not is to look at the history of their community service. So if you are someone who's been doing these things in between the 4 years even that you ran, which, by the way, 99.9% of candidates who ran and did not get in do not continue to do anything in the community. They disappear. They go back into their private lives, into their private businesses, and they focus on making their coins and whatever. Some of them change their phone numbers. You dare not even call them for help because they're not going to be available. So I think a good way to gauge whether or not someone is genuinely concerned about helping people and solving issues in the community is whether or not they have continued to do so despite the fact that they did not get elected. Now, Alric, I want to put this question to you because I think this is an important one. And yes, you have to tell people because people may not know. So to some extent, there is a degree of self-promotion that has to go on so that people know what you have been up to. Now, we know lately what you've been up to since COVID. You've been assisting, school children with laptops, especially in the primary school system, to make sure that they have access to laptops. You've been feeding a lot of people. I mean, I would venture to say thousands of meals, because you were literally doing 7 days a week. And another thing that I think can speak to whether someone is being genuine or not is, I see your point about just giving a nonprofit money, but actually that's an easy thing to do. To actually get up, put on your clothes, go door to door to someone's house yourself, not hiring someone. Get a real sense of the plight of people during COVID in this country, in our various subsections of the community, because of the fact that you were actually going door to door. You were handing them a meal. And with that might have came this micro conversation. Alric, I was working in tourism, or I was doing this, just like you found out about the bus driver. So it gives you an opportunity to be in contact and in touch with the average person. That if you just had made that donation and said, here you go, Meals on Wheels, here's $10,000, you do your thing, you deliver the foods, and I'm going to sit in my little corner, you lose out, in my opinion, on an opportunity to really get involved in the lives of the community members, the people who ultimately will vote. So let's talk about your extensive history of giving back. Now, I'm very much well aware that we actually have a conversations with segment that we have to record a part 2 about you, which will give people a little bit more insight into where you've come from, your university days and your upbringing. But just in terms of this specific question, because we do get this question a lot, give us a rundown, start from, I don't know how far back you want to go, but just give us, maybe even since just the last election, what are some of the things that you've continually done that people may not know anything about?
Yeah, so I mean, I originally started volunteer work with the Leo Club when I was very young. So the Leo Club we're trying to reestablish the Leo Club now in Cayman, but Leo Club is basically the junior of the Lions Club. And when I was young, we took care of the public beach and we assisted the community on a regular basis. So this started when I was very young, and the reason for me being this way is because we had lost our home at a young age, which is also similar to Kathy Ann Wilkes, who lost her home as well at a young age. And you can start to see the similarities between the people I'm aligning with. We sort of have a similar story. So that's really the reason that I give, because I realized that a lot was given to us as children, and then I decided to just give back. And so I started with the Leo Club, assisting the community. And after Leo Club, I got involved with Junior Achievement, which was run by Rotary. And, or was it Rotary at the time? I think it was Rotary at the time. Originally, I was a junior achiever, making the products and doing these businesses. And after that, I became an advisor. So I was a junior achievement advisor, and I met a lot of people during that process. And our goal was to basically ensure that the young people got the proper guidance, how to start a business, what things to look out for, and to answer their questions, to have ongoing correspondence with young people. And after junior achievement, I basically went to university, and while I was in university, I was involved in a program which is similar to Big Brother, Big Sister in Cayman. And it was a very hard experience in the US, because I'm not saying that in the US it is worse than Cayman when it comes to poverty and difficult situations, but some of the things I saw in the US, I kind of saw for the first time in life. The child that I was helping as a big brother, basically. He was telling me stories like, his parents had died of AIDS, and sometimes he had to eat out of garbage cans. And I mean, that is something I never heard before, and it's something like you see in one of those commercials, where children are starving, and it's something that you hear about in movies. And I work with this child for a while, and assisted with his schoolwork, et cetera, et cetera. After coming back from university, I got involved in Rotary. So I was a member of Rotary for a while, but I ended up leaving Rotary because at the time they had some strict attendance rules. So you had to have a minimum attendance. And because I was working and I had to focus on work, basically, I couldn't meet those attendance requirements. So after leaving Rotary, I basically started to do my own individual sort of helping people where I could, and I've been doing it along the way. And not enough stuff is publicized, but more recently, so in 2019, I decided to help out with Meals on Wheels. And at the time, last year when I wanted to join Meals on Wheels, the thing is, Meals on Wheels was so busy. They had a waiting list. So if you want to be a volunteer, it was, at least last year when I started, you had to go on this long waiting list. But I actually didn't go on a waiting list. I just showed up at the events and started helping them. So because I just showed up at the events and helped them, they started to call me back. So last year, I also started with Cayman Food Bank, where the food bank was initially just set up to be a place to help other charity groups. So like Feed Our Future or, Meals on Wheels as well. So they would give like some bulk items, Meals on Wheels, or some bulk items to Feed Our Future. And Cayman Food Bank also was assisting the John A. Cumper Primary School, the kids that didn't have enough money for lunch. Food Bank would also provide for the pantry up at John A. Cumber. Helping those associations last year, we didn't know that Corona was going to happen. And then Corona happened, right? So I became engaged and came on Food Bank initially like 7 days a week because the doctors at the doctor's hospital had made their kitchen available. So if you don't know, the Christian Thomason Hospital, which is now a doctor's hospital, they have their own kitchen, right? So they prepare their food there. So the doctors there decided that they would donate some money, and their kitchen would cook the food, and then our drivers would then collect and take to East End, North Side, West Bay, basically all the districts. Became very involved with Food Bank 7 days a week. And then I started driving for Meals on Wheels as well. And Meals on Wheels was 5 days a week. During the lockdown, basically most of my stuff started to be, most of my driving was Meals on Wheels during the lockdown. And also, and we didn't just serve Georgetown, and we served all over. So there were some days that a driver from West Bay was sick. So then I had to take up the West Bay route. And that's why when I took up the West Bay route, I mean, West Bay is really painful. I mean, like to see how a lot of people in Cayman were suffering, but in particular, some places in West Bay where seniors were living, it was pretty hard to see how some seniors were living in West Bay. And like a sort of a piece of my heart went to West Bay. I mean, it was really hard to see that.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, the other things I was involved in was we had a restaurant, we had the Wharf that the Wharf had agreed to basically cook the dinners, cook the lunches for free, as long as we provided the ingredients. So myself and other people sometimes would just take by vegetables. We would take by chicken, fish to the wharf, and the wharf would just cook it for free. I think people had a misconception that the wharf was only cooking for foreign tourism workers. That wasn't the case at all. Some of that food did go to foreign tourism workers, but also deliveries were made to different areas of Cayman to Caymanians, tourism workers who were displaced, didn't have a job, didn't have the money for food. So I just want to clear up that misconception that the wharf was only helping foreign persons. We're helping a lot of Caymanians as well. So I was very happy to be part of that program. And later on, I saw that some of the tourism workers weren't getting a dinner, and although they were getting a lunch, it occurred to me that there's some people who are going to bed without a dinner. So that's why I started a dinner program for some of the West Bay tourism workers. And sort of the reason I chose West Bay is to avoid this misconception or this perception. If I did a dinner program in Georgetown, people would say, "Oh man, he's just doing it for the votes." So I deliberately did the West Bay program, not only because I also like West Bay and West Bay people, but because I saw that there was a need, and I saw that there was also a high number of West Bayers who were in tourism and who didn't have anything. So I started a dinner program, and initially I had a chef in West Bay who was cooking, and as life would happen, my chef got sick, and the doctor told her she couldn't cook anymore. And so because my chef got sick and I had to continue serving the people, I then started to use a lot of local restaurants. So I started to use what I used to call Cubans in West Bay. And I started to use, Corner Restaurant. And before it was Carib Cafe when they were open. And then Famous Restaurant down by Schoolhouse Road. So I started to use a lot of local restaurants and also Lavana's Kitchen. And obviously, the reason I use local restaurants is because they sort of had a tough time during the whole lockdown. And to explain what I mean, we had some contributors, some donors who would donate money, but some of that money was focused on the restaurants along West Bay Road. Not all of the money, but I didn't see a lot of local restaurants getting that funding. So part of my thing was to make sure that sort of like there was a level playing field, that, everyone across the board was getting something. And that's sort of my goal in politics as well, is to make sure there's a policy that people can access things and people have the benefits of things across the board. And there's not some special group only that's always getting the same benefits and the same profits and getting to improve their lives. So that's why I started to engage like more of the local restaurants so that they can make some money out of this process too. So that dinner program ended a few weeks ago. After that, Michael Maz and I then started to get donations for the whole back to school program for children. And we used our own money and also got donations for the back to school program. And in particular, one of the biggest donations came from PricewaterhouseCoopers. So I would have to thank, Craig Smith and Sean Parchment, who are partners at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and also Cayman, who saw this need to be filled, and we executed that need, and we supplied quite a number of school backpacks to kids, and we filled them with books and pens and paper and other stuff that they would need for their school. And there's a lot of things that you're not aware of because we don't publish because it's so sensitive. We have people that have traveled to Cayman, who are Caymanians who are traveled to Cayman for medical reasons, and I've assisted them to make sure they have housing here where they didn't have housing, assisted to make sure that they were able to have a facility where they could get food. And, most recently, there's a lady who, right after the storm, was basically told that, she was going to be evicted. So I also got involved in that process, and that's a current process that's happening now where she's now giving me written authority. Can you hear me?
My apologies. I think I muted my mic. Hi, Alric. No, I was saying when you mentioned the storm, you're talking about the storm that just happened this past weekend.
Yeah.
So the
storm that just happened this weekend. One of the things that came out of that was this lady told me that she was told that she would have to move out of her house because there were some issues with making arrangements for payments. So what she did was, I told her, I could talk to the relevant parties for you to see if we can try to have an arrangement worked out so you don't have to lose your home. And so she gave me written permission to ask relevant parties what can be done. And so that's a current process we're going through right now. So I have to meet with some people to see what efforts have been made in the past and can be done right now, because she has children. And again, if she loses the house, what will happen next? You'll have to go to government, right? And that's the thing that we're trying to avoid. We're trying to help Caymanians be in a position where they're stable, they can help themselves, they can lift themselves, they can lift their family, they can help each other. That's where we're really trying to head. So I don't want her to lose her house. I mean, her mother is there, her children are there. I don't want to see Caymanians out on the street and begging NAU. And as you know, with NAU, the process can take a long time. They have to assess you to make sure that you can qualify for their funding. And then sometimes your documents get lost. And so you have to resubmit your documents, and it can be a very frustrating process to go through.
Okay. So, yeah, sorry, Alric. Aliano says, before the lockdown, I was driving a bus making $500 a week and doing bio tours at night, running a boat as its captain, making $90 a trip. The lockdown hit, my PTU was active, but ran out during the lockdown. So what tough luck. What am I to do? Sit around and waste my time with works? No, we have a traffic issue. Why weren't no drive days created to mitigate the flow of traffic? Utilize some buses from some of those bus companies, set up the transport routes, and get bus drivers for those buses to move people. So Aliano is suggesting one way, and this is actually a very creative idea, to address both the traffic issue and also create opportunities for people who were, bus and tour drivers, is for government to start working on their traffic management plan and have people bust into town instead of driving once the COVID restrictions were lifted, instead of having them back to square one, where especially if you're from the Eastern District, you're going to spend much of your commute time sitting in bumper to bumper traffic. So Walton agrees that that's actually a great idea and that it could work.
Yeah, but the issue is that our government has been focused on global citizen regulations, facilitating jobs and facilitating the continuation of income generation for overseas people, not Caymanians. So they are right. Your viewers are right, because we missed a great opportunity. We saw how traffic was. We didn't have any traffic during the lockdown. I mean, it was amazing. I only knew because I was driving, delivering food, so I knew the streets were empty. That was amazing. So we lost that opportunity. Instead of gradually allowing the traffic back. Instead of what we should have done, we should have said, companies, please allow your employees to work remotely. And for those who really need their staff into work, this is what we're going to do to avoid this big traffic problem. We're going to look at all those bus drivers who are unemployed or who have no business because tourism is gone. Those bus drivers, we're going to say exactly what your viewers just said. We're going to have a system which has a flexible bus route as well, because as I mentioned earlier, the public transport unit doesn't seem to be flexible and a lot. They don't seem to be allowing flexibility for drivers on the bus routes. They had a perfect opportunity to say, you guys not working. Let's put you guys on some bus routes from Georgetown to Easton or wherever. Let's get more big buses on the road or small buses on the road that are regularly serving these districts. And that way, we would have less cars on the road. We'd have less traffic, less mental stress, less road rage to deal with. And people would be getting to work on time. And at the same time, the guys would be making money, taking care of their family. So you got people going back to work who are making money. And then you got your bus drivers who are taking them there who are making money. But instead, what we have is a system where policies are not being designed for the furtherance of Caymanians and for the lifting of Caymanians and for the progression of Caymanians. They're being designed for the progression of other people. And so that's the unfortunate thing. What the things your viewers said, they're perfect. Opportunity coming out of lockdown, perfect. It wasn't done. Why wasn't it done? Because they're not thinking about our best interests. They're about other people's best interests and how to get more money into Cayman, more people renting in Cayman, which then drives up the prices. And then us Caymanians who can't get the jobs or can't get the correct income, we can't afford those properties anymore. So again, we come right back to policy, for whose benefit.
Now you're still falling over, Alric. I need you to come back this way. There you go. Okay, so Liliana Hawkins says this gentleman speaks well with great experience and what's going on in Cayman. The thing is, not only know but willing to do after becomes. Newlands and Savannah urgently needs representatives. Okay, so Newland and Savannah urgently needs representative. That's an interesting comment that Newlands has been thrown into the mix. Thank you so much, Miss Liliana, for that.
You don't live near Newlands?
Sorry?
You don't live near Newlands?
I live near Newlands and Savannah, actually. I think technically I'm kind of in between these days. I'm in Lower Valley, so I'm very much in the mix.
Wasn't there a candidate announced for Savannah recently?
Yeah, but you know what? That young lady, this is where, again, I have a bit of an issue. There's some persons who have obviously announced that they're coming out. There are people, the vast majority of candidates will wait until the last minute. So they don't want to give you a whole lot of time to get to know them. And I personally think this is a disservice to them. And if any of these candidates out there looking, if you're not an incumbent and you still have not declared, and you're waiting till January or February, when is nomination day, Alric?
It's end of March.
Yeah, so if you're waiting until then to even let the people know that you're running for an election that is May the 26th, I do not believe that you are giving the people of this country enough time to get to know you, to ask the questions. As we see, Alric has committed to coming on this program every Thursday so that we can put him under stress. We can put him under pressure. We can, ask him the questions that we, the people, want to know. And that gives us an idea of what type of person Alric is, what potential type of candidate he could be if elected to public office. And I think that that is really important. You don't get to just paint a rosy picture of who you are a couple weeks before a general election, and that's it. No. We want to know a bit more about the people who are putting themselves forward for political office. And the people who announced early, I still find that the vast majority of them have made the announcement. I do know that some of them are doing more groundwork, which is great and very much necessary. Alric goes out every evening at 5 o'clock and he's walking his neighborhood and he's talking to potential constituents. That has its place. But I also think that the people who, are on social media platforms, who are not necessarily at home when you come, they want to see and hear from you as well. So yes, you've got to do the circuit, you've got to do the talk show circuits. We don't technically have a TV show anymore, but CMR is as close as you're going to get to that these days. So you need to do the television circuit. You need to get out there and be able to just have people, shoot questions at you and respond to those. So unfortunately, the young lady who has declared for Savannah, she declared early, which was good, but nothing else has happened. And when we said to her a few weeks ago, people are asking for information about you. They want to know more about you. They want to know what policies you have in mind. How are you going to fix your issues? All of these things. She basically said, soon come, that she's still preparing. And I think that you do yourself a disservice when you announce that you're running for public office and you're not ready to jump straight in and do what you got to do. So unfortunately, I think nobody's going to take her serious as a candidate because she has not put herself out there. She has declared and then pumped the brakes and said, I'll let you know when I'm ready. And that's just not how it works. That's not how people are going to view you as a viable candidate for public office. So that's kind of what I've got my ears to the ground in Savannah. And certainly those of you who live in the Savannah area, including Ms. Sue, you can tell me if you agree with that or not. What is your viewpoint on the one person who has decided that they're going to challenge Anthony Eden? I mean, it doesn't seem like as much of a challenge at all. And I think most people are of the opinion that Anthony needs to be challenged, Mr. Anthony, and, that perhaps he should consider retirement. But anyway, that's just my opinion on you people who want to run for public office. We are here to scrutinize you. That's what it's all about. Having said that, let's do a couple announcements because we are out of time this morning. Just FYI, the Department of Environmental Health has announced that it's going to commence its bulk waste removal program starting this coming Monday, the 16th of November, and it's going to run until Monday, the 21st of December. So all of you who have, probably as a result of the storm, bulk waste that you need to put out to the curbside. And can I just ask a question? Do English people spell curb K-E-R-B, or is that a typo from me? Is that how it's spelled?
That's like somebody's name.
They have it curbside. And I'm not the best at spelling all English words. I know most of the big ones, but I've never seen curbside spell like that. Is that Sue, help me out. You're originally from the UK. Is that an English thing? Because I've always seen it spelled like C-U-R-B. So,
well, I'll be honest, my spelling has gotten worse as I got older, but I'm only aware of curbside.
I guess I better Google it.
I'm only aware of
it looks like it's, it must be the UK spelling because it does have it. Wikipedia says curbside collection or curbside, then they have it spelled the way that we're familiar with. Okay. Well, I guess that's a UK spelling of curbside. I have never seen that word in my life. I got to be honest with you. So there you have it, folks. Don't be messaging me talking about we misspelled it now. Because I know some of you be like, what word is this? Normally when government sends out their press releases, I actually change the spelling from the UK spelling to the American spelling because I grew up in the American system. And so I know a lot of our readers are actually Americans as well. We have more Americans overseas reading our platform. So I'm going to actually change the spelling of that word. I don't even like the way it looks. So listen, folks, you got to be aware of these so that you can put your stuff out to the curbside. Carol says curbside, and I'm from the UK. So maybe she's never heard of it before either. But apparently, yeah, weird. All right, folks, your bulk information, I've just put the link in the comment section. Please check it out. They've got dates set up for both Grand Cayman and Cayman Brac. I guess Little Cayman doesn't really have any curbside pickup. The place is so small. But here you go. This is what it is for Department of Environmental Health. They start with North Side and East End starting on Monday. Town is next, which would include all the subsections like Lower Valley, Savannah, and so on. Georgetown goes into December, and then West Bay will be the final district that they will be picking up for. And of course, folks, make sure that you're also aware, if you reside in Cayman Brac, that they've not forgotten about you. They also have dates available for Cayman Brac East, Cayman Brac West, Cayman Brac South. Oh, there we go. Little Cayman has not been forgotten. December the 22nd, right before Christmas, they will do Little Cayman as well. So how it works is, read all the details in the article, but essentially they will, allow you to put stuff by the curbside. Don't put it like, if you live in West Bay and you know that West Bay is going to be the last one to be serviced, don't put it out this weekend, because they're not going to get to West Bay until December the 14th. So, don't have the sidewalk looking like, disgusting. And the curbside looking disgusting with roaches hanging out on the curbside because they're trying to get into your garbage. If they're not going to get to you for 2 or 3 weeks. So I implore you to use a little bit of common sense, folks, when you decide to utilize the curbside facility.
So actually the notice that I was sent has it spelled with a K. So it does, the notice that I received, it says, to use more information, it says metals and other waste must be separated from the bulk waste. Mm-hmm. And waste includes such items as old appliances, metal furniture, metal roofing, and the other waste includes trimming from the branches, some of the fallen leaves that we've seen after the hurricane. And just to give you more guidance, what they mean by bulk waste refers to large items like old furniture, household appliances, and other items are not regularly collected by DEH as a part of their residential pickup. I see Atlas saying curbicides.
Well, all of the details are in the article, and like I said, I put that in the link so that you know how to do it properly. So that you don't waste the time of the DEH employees. The other thing is, normally around this time of year, we do hear about the community cleanup project. What's it called again? Where they hire unemployed Caymanians.
Nice project.
Nice, yes. Yeah. And it has occurred to me this week that we have heard nothing as yet about the NICE program. So government officials, I do know you got your spies out there that listen to the program. Can you kindly advise us of when we can hear more about NICE and when it will, oh my gosh, I've just got something.
Why don't we have the people on a NICE program? Why don't we have them in a trade school so that they're not unemployed for the whole year, but they can be acquiring more skills during the year? I mean, that would be a great thing for the government to invest in. I'm not sure. I think there are hundreds of people in this NICE program who are only getting jobs summer and Christmas, and they should be employed for the whole year or doing nothing. I think we should get them involved in a trade school. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. Policies that help people get to the next level, not having people in the same situation every year for the next 4 years. And, they haven't progressed, That's what I'm interested in doing. And that's why I want Sandy to run for.
Yeah. Listen, we actually have to run. I just realized that an email came in that we have a press conference at 10 o'clock for another political party that is kicking off here called the People's Party, the Cayman Islands People's Party, CIPP. This is Mr. Ezra Miller, and they are actually having their formal opening of their new office at 10 o'clock this morning. And I'm only now just seeing this invitation for some reason. So Alic, you're already dressed. I need to finish getting dressed and grab my bag so that I can head out there. And I will live stream from that location, folks. So tune in for that. And yes, goodbye, Walton. Alic, once again, thank you. We will see you next week, Thursday, as usual. And have a good week between now and then.
Okay, you too. Have a good day.
All right, folks. We'll see you in a little bit on the live stream. Take care for now.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.